Welcome back. Welcome back to another episode of Till the Wheels Fall Off. I am Matt.
I'm Paige.
Today, our guest is Celeste Yvonne. You have heard me talk about Celeste for a long time now. The author of one of my favorite books. It's not about the wine. We've referenced Celeste and this book and the just the lessons you can learn within it more times than I can count. And we are lucky enough today to have her on the show. If you don't know who Celeste is, her social media, it's the Ultimate Mom Challenge. She's a celebrated writer, speaker, and advocate who's empowering parents and women to find their voice, redefine motherhood, embrace authenticity, and sober living. Listeners can expect to have insights on navigating motherhood, the mental load of motherhood, breaking free from societal pressures, embracing sobriety, and finding balance in parenting and personal growth. I think it's going to be an amazing conversation, and you are not going to want to miss it. Quickly, we'll get house cleaning out of the way. Check out our website, twfo.com. That's twofo.com. You can find all kinds of awesome stuff there. We've got a free community, a Facebook community. If you're a listener to the show, come on over. There's 3,500 other wheelies who listen to the show, and they're connecting. And sometimes you just need to be heard. Sometimes you need to vent. Sometimes you need to be validated. Sometimes you just need to connect and know that you're not alone. You can do all that stuff. Just check over the website. And while you're there, we've got these things. I keep forgetting about this. This is a recovery rock. This is a really cool rock. It's got our logo on the front. We get it out of the light. And on the back, it says, "Thank you for being my rock." This is a cool token of appreciation for a spouse, someone that has walked through hell and back with you. People like me, people like Celeste, you know, we've recovered and faced our demons and done a lot of great things. It's not to diminish that, but spouses and partners don't get that kind of thing. It's a really cool way to acknowledge their role in your recovery. You can get those. I also restocked sweatshirts. Finally,
Woot woot.
So sorry it took so freaking long. We also added a color, like an oatmeal one now with a cranberry font. It's really fun. Those are over there. You can also check out our newsletter blog. You can sign up for that. I promise you I will not spam you or send you weird stuff. It's just a free blog that comes out every Monday morning. You can check it out. Enter your email address at the very bottom of the page. And then we've got a course. We built a course. If you're a listener to the show and you're like, hey, I would love to be on this path. I like that mindset. How do I get there? Well, we did that. We built a course with a licensed therapist. It's an alternative to things like Al-Anon. Traditionally 12-step groups like Al-Anon have been the only really resource that spouses have. And we wanted to create another one. And we've done that. We use a method we call VEER. We will validate you. We will educate you. We will empower you, and we will help you on your own recovery journey. It's amazing. It's 10 modules long. It is robust. It's not something you're going to finish in a weekend and be like, oh my God, I spent that money on that. No, it will take you time. It also comes with a free weekly call that comes with that. Paige is leading those most of the time, but
Sometimes
I
you hop in.
I pop in from time to time when she gets exhausted. When I come home and I know that she's just burned out, you will get me. So check that out. It's independentlystrong.com, or you can access it through our website. And for a limited time, you can get 75% off using the code Wheelies75. That's Wheelies with an S, 75. And last but not least, thank you to SoberLink. SoberLink is a sponsor of our show, and incredibly grateful for them. They are an amazing partner, and we believe in what they're doing. If you don't know what SoberLink is, it's this really cool device. It's a little bit bigger than this as a mouse, but it's like iPhone sized, and it's a really high-tech breathalyzer. I see this all the time where people will post in the community, or we'll get emails and they'll say, hey, we're using a breathalyzer right now for some accountability. We're trying to rebuild trust. And this thing is like, he's claiming that he ate candy and it's showing like he blew a .03. Is that possible? I'm like, probably not. Or people can kind of get around these things. Guys like me are really clever. And like, if I really wanted to get around something, I'm pretty sure I could figure it out.
Facts.
SoberLink has eliminated any possibility of that. It is tamper proof and it is accurate. It is very accurate. So if you are in a situation where you're trying to rebuild trust, it's got this really cool system where you can set up sober contacts. If it might be your spouse, it might be a friend, it could be a counselor, whoever, right? And it lets them know when you have blown that day. And those are scheduled times you all agree on, and it will show, hey, still sober, still doing the thing. It helps the people around you know that your actions match your words. And that can be really, really helpful. It can be really helpful, especially for spouses, because you've kind of lost your way when it comes to trusting and intuition, because we lie, and this is going to cut through that. It's also, I would say, critical. I would not have it any other way if I was in a custody battle of some kind or custody arrangement, to know that my children were going somewhere safe, to know that they were with a safe and sober person. SoberLink is not interested in like picking sides or getting people in trouble. It's nothing like that. They are interested in providing the most accurate data possible. And they do that by having people on standby 24/7 to review this stuff to make sure that the data is accurate. And if there's something that they see as weird, they will send you a notice to blow again. And that's why it's trusted by over 200,000 people. And it's court admissible in all 50 states and in Canada. SoberLink has given our listeners a $50 off coupon if you go to the website, soberlink.com/wheels. Again, it's soberlink.com/wheels. You can check that out and get you $50 off a device. And that concludes announcements. Let's get this thing going. I've been looking forward to this one for
a long time.
So long. We were talking before we got started. And so Celeste was like the first like legitimate person that followed us. And like, cause she had a blue check mark next to her name. I'm like, oh, who is this? This isn't a bot. And you know, like we were paying for Instagram ads when we first started trying to get noticed. And then an actual human, and not just a human, but like a talented one with like a following and like a real message. It's like, oh wow, it was like the first time we'd ever been validated, I guess, in what we were doing.
Yeah,
and it was
surreal.
So freaking cool to me. So it's like I feel like I'm meeting like a hero of mine. And you're such a talented writer, and I've always admired everything you do. And so, Celeste, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Paige. I'm super excited to be here. Like I told you guys before, I genuinely admire what you're doing. It is unique, it is important, and it is life-saving. So thank you guys for putting yourselves out here. It's not easy, but you're doing it. And I hope you know that you are the rock to countless couples everywhere. So thank you.
Thank you so much. That means the world to me. I'm going to remember. That's what I'm going to remember about this day. That's the remember. Okay. I'm going to talk about the book first. It's not about the wine. I grabbed this book and I read this book and it blew my mind wide open. And I feel stupid for saying that, but I'm just being honest because it opened my eyes to issues that were going on within my own home that I didn't fully recognize. And it's not that Paige hadn't said something before. I'll credit you as a writer. I think you just really got that message across in a beautiful way. But it was so impactful to me to understand the title and what it really meant. And this is the book for anyone watching. She's got it behind her too, but it's not about the wine. I love the cover, by the way, with the wine rings. That's greatness. I love that. I love that. Says, and the tagline is the loaded truth behind mommy wine culture. And I knew that you were in recovery and I wanted to read about that, but I didn't know what it was really about. I had no clue. And it resonated with me because it really explores the mental load that a lot of women carry that leads to them drinking and making the jokes about, you know, alcohol and like why you need to drink. And it's because of your children. It's because of the stress. And you were the first person I ever heard say, time out. Do you realize how preposterous that is, that we're having to do that? And so just give me some background on how this came to be, the book, everything.
Mm-hmm. Sure. So it all starts with me quitting drinking. I quit drinking. It'll be 7 years in a couple weeks.
Congratulations.
2017. Thank you. Very end of 2017. 5 days before Christmas, you know, the worst time to quit drinking.
What a time to pick.
What everybody says, right? And of course, I don't think anybody picks their sober date. Our sober dates pick us.
Yes.
But I think it was very telling that I quit drinking just before Christmas. We had 3 holiday parties that weekend, and I wasn't even drinking excessively at those parties, but it was just this build up of just like it was never enough. It was never fulfilling. And I always woke up the next day feeling like shit. And so I quit drinking that Monday after a panic attack when I got to work. You know, they talk about the Sunday scaries. Well, this was the Monday scaries, and just getting to work, my email was kind of cranking out in the morning, you know, when it's been offline for the weekend and you're watching it all kind of show up on your screen. And I had this panic attack, and that really was my come to Jesus moment. Like I what am I doing? What am I doing? So I quit, but I really quit reluctantly. I didn't know what I was doing. I was not an alcoholic. That was like in my gut. I was like, well, I'm doing this, but I'm not doing it this way. And it was it felt like so begins a future of deprivation. Like it was as unwilling and unmotivated and unexcited as humanly possible. Um, and it wasn't until I was about a year sober that I was like, okay, this is how I want to do this. Like, this is the life I want to live. This is everything I was hoping for. I'm all in. It took me a whole year to like be able to say, I'm committed to this. Uh, but it was after that I started asking these questions like, why? Like, why are so many women drinking? I mean, the stats show that, especially right during the pandemic, but leading up to the pandemic, from the 2010s through 2020, the buildup for women's drinking was skyrocketing. We were always under men's drinking levels for decades. And then in the 2010s, we started to almost go neck and neck. And why was that? What was leading up to it? And of course, the first thing I thought of was mommy wine culture. That was my first, like, I need to dig into this, because mommy wine culture, is this narrative that playfully jokes or implies women need alcohol to survive our children, to survive raising our children, to survive parenting our children. And while this message has been around a really long time, think of Mommy's Little Helper from the Rolling Stones. I mean, this is not a new conversation of mommy needing to numb out to survive motherhood. What happened in the 2010s that created this echo chamber? Well, it was social media. Social media exploded. And with that, the opportunity to like and share these kind of fickle messages of mommy needs wine, my kids are the reason I drink, mommy juice, was able to mass explode. And so at first, I was kind of angry at this message. I felt like it was the message's fault because, I'm still working through my own recovery, trying to blame somebody. Matt, you know about this,
I
right?
know exactly what you're talking about.
And it wasn't until, I started digging deeper. It's like, well, why does mommy wine culture resonate so much? And I was thinking about, why was I using it to cope? And that's when I made the connection to the mental load of motherhood. And that is the responsibility of parenting and household duties, in addition to all these things like organizing, reminding, being the default parent, that for the most part fall on women in a traditional relationship. And to have all that heavy responsibility on top of many women also returning to work post baby is a vicious cycle. It is leading us down sometimes a very dark path where our mental health gets taken care of last. And I was certainly somebody who was susceptible to mental health struggles my entire life. So to turn to alcohol um, during that time, post babies especially, uh, almost felt inevitable. Uh, and I wanted to kind of unmask and uncover this. Why are women drinking like this? Uh, and besides the quitting alcohol, which seems like the logical step, right? What do we need to be doing at the roots to live a life where we don't need to numb out
Mm-hmm.
in the first place? And that really was the impetus for the book.
hold on. I just have to chime in because I relate to it so much. I've been really open and honest about how when our first child was born in 2012 and then our second was in 2014, and that time frame, I coped with alcohol a lot. It was a thing for me too. And I remember I came home with my daughter when she was first born, and I was sitting in bed and I was like exhausted and I was like, oh my gosh, what am I doing? We had people who were at our house and somebody brought me a glass of wine. And they're like, here, you need to have this to chill out. And my first thought was like, I don't really want this. I don't really need this. What am I doing? I drank it. I did, because I was like, this is what I felt like I was supposed to do based on society or what I've been told or what we've been conditioned to do. It's like, this is what you do. This is how you cope. This is how you deal. You need this glass of wine. And it really stuck with me, and it made me think a lot about my experiences while I was reading your book.
Mm-hmm. I completely get that. And you know what's interesting? I had kids a couple years after you. I'm 2014, 2016. When I had my first drinks after my kids, it was almost like I wanted to be in on the joke. Like I was eager to be like, I get it, mommy needs wine, you know, because it was so prevalent at that point. And that is where I can really see the dangers of that message. It's kind of planting this seed of, you need help, you're stressed out. Yep, we get it. Here's what you do.
The messaging to me is kind of fascinating. I think it might have been one of your Substack posts, or it could have just been something I stumbled upon. I'm not sure. I'll just give you credit. How about that? There was someone that had posted pharmaceutical ads going back as far as the 50s, maybe the 60s. And it was about various drugs that had been marketed toward women over the years, and like tranquilizers, benzos, Valium. I think Valium was like primarily targeted toward women. And like some of these ads, like the messaging in the ads, it would have a woman vacuuming or something like that, and it's like, oh, everything that she's doing. Or sometimes it was really brazen and ugly. It would be like, you know, because mom snaps at everybody, she needs this. And it's just been something that's been sold to women for so long. And this is almost like a stepchild of that. I never got to see much of the memes. I know that because our algorithms are different, right? Mine's got like baseball and stuff. Yours is full of wine memes. But what are some of for anyone who's not familiar, like what are some of the common ones?
Yeah. So first, let me say that definitely wasn't my Substack. But this message of connecting, even the word hysterical, the roots go back to like Latin female body parts, you know. So this connection between a hysterical woman or a woman who is crazy, you know, the gaslighting that women have received for so long, um, and in need of generally being drugged out to chill out a little bit, has been going on for so long, with that connotation. Um, so yeah, the roots of it are fascinating. And I think the book that most opened me up to that connection was Quit Like a Woman by Holly Whitaker. But I have seen other books kind of tackle this concept that's way bigger than you know, mommy needs wine memes that started in 2010. Like we are talking centuries of this message that nobody wants a hysterical woman. Yeah. So yeah, just to get back to that. But for the mommy wine memes, the ones that I was reading that most spoke to me, and I have to also say, I was a writer. I wrote about motherhood before I quit drinking. I had a blog, and I was a perpetrator. I made some of the memes. Um, I was part of the problem. So um, I carry some blame with that. But with that, you know, the things that most, I remember reading a meme right after I quit drinking, when I was like, I don't want anybody to know, this is my secret. And it said something like, I base my child's play dates on which moms I want to drink wine with. I remember thinking that and seeing that and being like, I'm not going to ever have friends again. Like, if this is my future, like, I'm screwed. Because who's going to want to hang out with the sober mom, the mom who says no to the alcohol at the play date? So, stuff like that, things that you don't think or that you think are totally harmless. It's just a joke. I can't tell you how many times people tell me that. It's just a joke. Lighten up, have a drink, all the comments we get. But it it's tackling things that we are vulnerable about. Friendships for me, it's hard. Friendships in motherhood are hard. And then, you look at some of the other memes like my kids are the reason I drink, mom juice, mommy needs wine. There's this onesie that people have sent me images of on Etsy because now everybody sends me the worst stuff, right?
Oh yeah.
And um, it's a onesie, for a little baby that says, I'm the reason mommy drinks.
Hmm.
And I know it's a joke. I know it's cute. I can only imagine as a daughter of an alcoholic looking at pictures of me as a baby, of even of my dad holding me up with, if I were to be wearing a little onesie where he was blaming me for what essentially became his downfall in life. And obviously, for most situations, that's not the case. But the fact is, what we do has tremendous implications on our children, even when we aren't a raging alcoholic. And our kids notice, Jessica Leahy, the author, says that kids start to notice or distinguish alcohol from other drinks as early as age 3. So they're seeing it, they're hearing the message, and they are recognizing that their parents are imbibing to have fun. And even if they're doing it responsibly, that's still sending a message.
It is, and you're right, and it's like guys, she knows it's a joke. We all know it's a joke, right? But it's a bit deeper than that because what does the joke say? What the joke says, and I think this is the real damage in it, just from my take, is that if you're stressed, this is what you do about it. If you're having a hard time, this is what we do about it. And it goes no further than that, right? We're not going to look at the reasons why we have a problem at all. We're not going to
Yeah.
discuss any sort of healthy coping skill or mechanisms or offer assistance. Drink. And it's been that way for a very long time. I think that we love shortcuts in general. People do, right? And that's why we're marketed junk food. It makes you feel good. Alcohol makes you feel good. Pornography. That can get into that. We had an episode about that just this last week, and it's like that's what we're sent. I don't remember the last time I saw like a beer commercial, for instance. Like people are partying and whatnot, and they're drinking. Right? That's the message. It's if you want to have a good time, drink Bud Light or Budweiser or whatever it might be. I would like to, or if someone's had a hard day, they come home and they crack open a beer. Like that's the messaging we get in every sitcom or movie that's ever been made. It seems like I don't remember the last time I've never seen anything where someone comes home and they like meditate or
Work out.
exercise, right? Why doesn't LA Fitness like have a commercial that mimics a beer commercial, except for instead of drinking a beer, you go to the gym and like get a run in or something, like if a mom is struggling,
The things that actually help you.
yeah, show her asking for help and her husband doing it as opposed to drinking wine. It's crazy. That's what the messaging says, though. That's what it really says. Like I know it's a joke, but that's what it's saying. That's what it's really saying. So your journey to recovery, it's fascinating to me because you didn't get sober working a traditional program, and that's always been fascinating to me. I got sober in a 12-step community, and I think anyone who does, especially early on, like you think that, oh, this is the only way. Like this is, and anyone who's doing it different is obviously doing it wrong, right? You mature, you grow up, and you understand that there are multiple paths to recovery. And so I kind of want to back up a bit in your story where you're talking about when it all came to a head and that day and the way it did and the note that you wrote. Like kind of walk me through how you identified alcohol as the problem and then what your solution was going to be.
My decision to quit drinking that day was months in the making. even though I didn't know it, right? You have convincing moments. And I had, looking back, I can see I had multiple convincing moments that led me to that day. Um, but on that day, it was that panic attack and going to the ER, realizing I'm not dying, but that connection immediately paralleled me to my father. My father was a self-described alcoholic his entire life, and he never was able to experience a organic recovery. You know, he had stints of sobriety, but they never lasted. Ultimately, you know, he had a severe stroke at 52 that permanently disabled him and limited his ability to access alcohol, which was probably the best thing that could have ever happened to him. I'm sorry to say, in that we were able to I was able to have a father for another 20 years. He did die about 5 years ago, but um, his he never was able to get to that root of the of seeing sobriety beyond deprivation. So, you know, I guess some people would probably call him a dry drunk towards the end. He genuinely just couldn't access alcohol. But he never was able to go through the emotional sobriety side of living and the joy that comes with that. But when I had that panic attack on that Monday at my office, um, the connection and the cognitive dissonance I was able to have leading to that point, saying, I am not my father. I am not his problems. I'm not an alcoholic. His drinking looks so different from mine. To converge that day was my moment of clarity and holy shit, what am I doing? And it was the most honest I had ever gotten around my own drinking, to finally say, what am I waiting for? Am I waiting for the stroke? Am I waiting for my husband to take the kids and leave? Like, what am I waiting for? Because I had seen firsthand through my father how this can go down. And it wasn't pretty. It was so destructive to our family unit. I was 15 when he had that stroke. It changed our lives forever. And I didn't want that for my family. No one does. But I had that firsthand experience. I had that example of what could happen. And to have just that brief moment of clarity of, if I don't do something now, I might never have this chance again, was what basically scared me sober that day. Now, I still refuse to call myself an alcoholic. I still refuse to go to AA, because I had seen how, or I believed it failed my father. So there was just really heavy feelings there. And I wanted to do this my own way. Looking back now, you know, I think AA would have been a much better option than just trying to go cold turkey like I did. I think I made it way harder on myself than I had to. But at the time, I I believed it was my only option. So, you know, everything in hindsight. When people ask me how did you quit drinking, I say, I'll tell you, but don't do it
Don't
like
recommend
I
it.
did it. Yeah, it was the worst way to do it. Don't do it like I did it. But I'm happy to share my story. Just don't use it as a shining example.
So that's what's so interesting about your journey to it, because I read everything you write, and I know that we've arrived at the same place. You just went about it a different way. My first year of sobriety, though, looks markedly different than you describe yours, and so that's what I'm curious about. What was it like depriving yourself without a substitute of some kind, like a community or a support person, or
Yeah.
or any information around, like, here's what you do when you feel X, Y, Z. You were literally troubleshooting this shit on your own. You were just like, I'm gonna figure this out, and the will it must have taken at times to deal with that. What was that like?
Yeah, I don't say will, I say stubborn, but um, it was like trying to breathe underwater for a year. I mean, the best way I can describe it is I white knuckled absolutely everything. Socializing, um, evening routine, parenting chaos, stress, vacations. I white knuckled it like my life depended on it. Um, and then, beautiful things would happen, and I would get that validation through that. But um, it was really hard. It was brutal, and to not have a community to kind of say, "I've been there," or "I've got your back," or "What you're feeling is normal," or "Here's how we can make it this easier." I mean, to not have any of that, again, like it was just so much harder than it has to be.
Though I almost think that, and this is just from my take on it, because I've read so much of what you've written. I think that everyone's journey is obviously different, but I think that the wisdom that you gained and the emotional intelligence that you did develop because you didn't have anyone else telling you and you were having to figure this out on your own. You didn't buy into slogans. You literally, like, you're going to figure this out. Like, you were doing calculus raw with no calculator. Like, I figured this out and I really had to learn it because it was exposure therapy for you in some way. And not to say that I suggest doing it, but there is no doubt a benefit to doing it in some ways, if you know what I mean,
Yeah,
like that.
I think so. I thought you took that out of my head.
I love that you said. I've never thought about it that way. Genuinely, I feel like I'm a year behind in my emotional sobriety because I missed out on so much knowledge gain. But I think there is some real truth to what you say. But it's funny now because now I will hear like an AA slogan for the first time, and I'll be like, "That's fucking brilliant," And I'm like 7 years sober. Like, oh, I could have used that 7 years ago. But
Oh, that's funny.
yeah, it's getting to hear these things that people have been saying for decades for the first time when I've been going through it, and I know exactly what they mean all these years later, and it hits very differently.
Okay. I want to ask you about the sober mom squad because you mentioned community,
Yeah.
and I love and I admire people that never ask for a seat at anyone's table. They're like, "Fuck you, I'll build my own table," and you did that, and I think that's awesome. It's almost like you created the like a support group in your own way. It's like if I was going to do it, it wouldn't exactly look like a 12 step. I'm going to do my own thing. How has that been now that you have a community and you've got an audience and you do have that support compared to early on when you didn't?
Yeah. I mean, so much has changed. So the Emily Lynn Paulson, who's like my best friend on earth, um, right when COVID hit, so it was like March 2020, she reached out to me and a couple others and said, "Hey, the recovery meetings have all but disappeared. People are worried about relapse. Um, do you want to work together and do something?" We didn't know what that was going to look like or anything, but I was like, absolutely. And so Emily put this together of like, let's just put a Zoom call together, and if anybody who identifies as a mom and is sober or sober curious can hop on this call. And we said it was probably for the last week of March that year. And that was the first time I had ever been on any sort of meeting. And it was such a game changer. It was so remarkable to listen to other people's stories and be like, they're telling my story. Like they completely understand, or when they share their concerns and their greatest fears, and I can be like, "You're taking the words right out of my mouth." There's so much validation in that, in knowing that here's another AA slogan that blew my mind: "You are not unique."
Mhm.
It was just mind blowing that there were people. littered across the country doing exactly what I was doing, feeling exactly what I was feeling, and still doing it and still getting through it. And then to also see myself as somebody who was, I think, I was 2.5 years sober at the time, to be the lighthouse guiding newly sober mothers was so empowering and so exciting. So that was my introduction to community, was through Sober Mom Squad. And I have been hosting meetings with Sober Mom Squad ever since. So it'll be 5 years next March.
And you've recently become a certified recovery coach as well.
Yes, I'm a certified recovery coach, which I got last year. I do not do coaching individually. I use it to help support and be the admin on these recovery meetings, but I really got it to help with my writing. I was like, if I am going to be writing about recovery, and if all these people want to follow me to help in their recovery, I want to have the responsibility of knowing what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was really the motivation for that.
Recovery takes on new meaning when you see someone else get it from something that you've done or said. You know what I mean? Like you've described being with other people. I don't remember who said it, but if you want to learn about something, you should read about it. And if you want to understand something, you should write about it. But if you want to master something, you should teach it. And then I remember the first time I had done that, helped someone else get to a place where they found like happiness without alcohol. Holy shit. Like I understand it better now. You understand it better now. It's sort of beautifully selfish. And so now I look for people I could possibly help, you know, not like Jehovah's Witnesses and stuff. I'm not knocking on doors or shit like that, but it's like, it just feels good. It feels good if someone reaches out and you're able to provide something, you know. I think it's awesome you created a space that does that. And that kind of, I don't know, was that the beginning of your advocacy, or was it before that? When did the book was released last year, 23?
Mm-hmm.
So before that, you'd become an advocate in some way. How did you become a voice of all this?
I started the very first post I wrote about my sobriety was at my 1 year soberversary.
You never wrote about it before 1 year?
No.
Wow.
Again, I thought this was something to be ashamed of.
Oh.
You know, my family with my dad, it was we don't talk about it. We don't think about it. You know, nobody can know. This is our family secret to carry. And I held that and wore that, you know, like my life depended on it. I was about 10 months sober, and I was in a writer's group, and they were doing let's just, everybody post something you're proud of. And I remember somebody posting, it was a friend of mine, saying, I'm 6 weeks sober. And I am so stinking proud. That's what she said. And that was the first time ever that I was like, wait, we're allowed to be proud of this?
What?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, because I just thought this was this shameful thing, this heavy burden. And it completely pivoted how I thought, how I felt. I was already working on a book on parenting. I had an agent at this point. We were putting this book idea together, and I decided at my 1 year soberversary I was going to do a post about it. And I wrote something being like, hey, guess what, you guys? You didn't know this about me because I didn't tell anybody, but I'm 1 year sober. I had a drinking problem. Like I was struggling with my drinking. I was using it to cope. It was affecting everything. And now I don't drink. Now I'm learning how to do the hard things. And it's not easy, but it's worth it. And my agent emailed me that day, and she's like, you got to put that other book aside. This is your book.
Mm.
And we were kind of playing with that idea of a sobriety book ever since.
Wow. not saying a word for an entire year, and then suddenly coming out with it and just feeling like, oh shit, I found my voice. This is it. This is
Mm-hmm.
the thing. This is the thing that I have to share.
And it's
What
like what
is,
you said, like it was it was one thing to be like, I'm sharing this secret, right? I am taking the power away um, of the shame by sharing this. But then to have the DMs and the comments of people saying, I'm struggling, or this something you said here touched me. To realize this is much bigger than me, and that there's so many people going through this. We can all kind of lean on each other, but when we hold these secrets, we can genuinely help nobody. So there's some additional, um, just that feeling that we are helping to kind of carry and share this message amongst others, was was really empowering.
yeah, there's another saying in AA is that we're only as sick as our secrets. And I remember like when I came to terms with the fact that I had a real problem, I needed help. The first thought that I had was, oh shit, I'm one of like quote unquote those people now. I'm one of those weirdos that everyone has to act strange around. And it took me like, I don't know, I was in a treatment center, so it's a little different. You're around it, like you're immersed in it. I wasn't trying to parent kids and like live a life like you were doing. I don't know how you did that. But I had time to mourn it. And there's something to be said about mourning that old way of life in some ways, because I would say the most valuable lesson I've learned in sobriety is how to experience my emotions from the beginning all the way to the end uninterrupted. Because when they used to become uncomfortable, I would just shut that down. And then you do that and you rob yourself of a lesson that you could learn that is going to be helpful for you and your children and everyone that you interact with and yourself. Um, what's the biggest lesson that you've learned in your recovery 7+ years out?
I mean, there's so many. I think one of my biggest drivers in my sobriety is to is learning how to reparent myself, right? It's learning how to um, give myself and my kids what I felt like I missed out on as a child. I talk to my kids all the time that there's no such thing as a bad feeling. And I don't, I almost think this is a generational thing. It certainly wasn't specific to my parents, but this idea of, stop crying, you have nothing to cry about. Um, Shame on you, all these expressions that came from being an 80s, 90s kid, um, of that emotion, that negative emotions were bad and or they were wrong. And having to relearn that as an adult is really hard. Like it's something I still push back on with myself all the time. I was just reading, and now I'm totally blanking on the book. It'll come to me later, but the author was talking about how even depression is a spectrum, that if you struggle with depression, you probably have it inside you at all times. It's part of your brain. But it's riding kind of this roller coaster wave where it picks up momentum sometimes and it goes back and kind of hides out, and you don't even notice it other times. But it's not something where you either have it or don't. It's a piece of you, it's a part of you. And for me, being able to say, like, that's not, that doesn't make me, I don't know, even the word mentally ill kind of, like, there's not necessarily something wrong with that. It's learning how to manage that, learning what to do about that, learning that no feeling is final. That's the empowerment. It's not learning what to do to numb it out momentarily until it comes back tomorrow.
Yeah, it's not getting rid of it. It's not judging it. It's actually accepting it, acknowledging it, and having awareness that we have a place. There's a place for all the feelings and all the emotions that we have. We try to teach that with our kids as well, and that's breaking those generational cycles. And it's really, really hard because we think we just always need to be happy. We always need to be comfortable. We always need to fix that emotion. When in reality, they're real. These are real emotions that we all need to feel. I love how you expressed that. That's great.
And in recovery, you have to learn how to take care of yourself in different ways. And you start to realize slowly but surely some of the underlying stuff that's going on that you've probably really never paid attention to. I want to talk about self-care for a moment and the ways that you now care for yourself where you didn't before. So you used to come home and used to have a really stressed out day and you never paid attention to where did that stress come from. What do you do now? Have more conversations, exercise? What do you do?
The thing I hate about self-care is that self-care that works the best is generally the ones that feel the least good.
Always.
Like,
Facts.
right? Um, Therapy. I hate therapy. I like
Let's get into that. Why?
having to like I'm an introvert, so having to
Oh,
talk to somebody for an hour one-on-one
like we're
where
doing
I'm
here.
supposed to lead the conversation
Oh,
is
okay.
basically my worst nightmare. And then, feelings on top of it, right? Like it's not just trying to keep a conversation going. You're trying to dig deep into things that you have been trying to repress that entire week. So therapy, I feel like, is probably one of my most important forms of self-care that I look forward to least. This is not a bubble bath. This is not um I think the forms of self-care that get the most attention. But for me, it's therapy. It is taking my meds in the morning. It is going to the doctor for routine appointments. It is going to the dentist. It is getting my mammogram. These are the things that aren't fun to do. Uh, you don't get a sticker afterwards, but they are what I do to take care of me. And I have to say, and this might be, I don't know if this is like this for dads too, but for mothers, it's so easy for us to take that part off our plate and be like, I got to get the kids to the doctor for their annuals. I got to get the kids their meds. I've got to get the kids their groceries for the week. I will take what's left over. And oh, look, there's no time left for me. It's fine. I don't need a mammogram this year, whatever. To say, no, I'm doing this. And that self advocacy, that's its own form of self care.
Big time, big time.
Yes.
And I think you've beautifully outlined the difference between self-care and self-indulgence as well. Like self-care, you're right. It's the hard stuff. It's the shit that no one really wants to do that makes
Yeah.
the most difference. It really does. It's the tough stuff. There is a place for self-indulgence. Don't get me wrong. Yeah, there's a time to go pamper yourself and do fun stuff that feels great.
Mm-hmm.
But self-care, real self-care that makes a difference.
Doing the hard things.
It's the hard shit. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's the doctor's appointments and it's
That will
therapy.
benefit you later on, like for sure later on.
Right.
Yeah.
And that if you don't do, no one's going to do them for you.
Right.
It's,
Yeah.
Okay.
I love that. I love how you distinguish that self-care versus self-indulgence.
Yeah, there is a difference. We
Yeah.
challenge listeners all the time to take care of themselves, self-care.
Mm-hmm.
And listen, you start where you can. And sometimes that means you start with self-indulgence because you literally were doing nothing. And a bubble
Sure.
bath is great.
Brushing your hair,
at least
brushing your
thought about
teeth.
yourself today
Yeah.
rather than a partner who's struggling or how terrible things are. Like you're going to focus on you, turn your phone off and just get some you time. And I think you did say something. I would say it is more difficult for women. It is. There are more demands on women than men. Different demands, right? But I still think there are more. And I know that you get attacked by guys. Maybe not as much as Abby, our friend Abby. But,
Not as much as that.
but surely you do. I think it's bizarre to me that you can write a book like this and you can have men say men have issues too. It's like I never said they didn't. I'm just writing a book about this. Like in saying that women have unique issues, you're not saying that men don't have their own set of unique issues, right? You're just talking about the issues that are relevant to you. You are a woman. You're talking about what you know, what you know. The issues that come up in this book are numerous. They've really changed the way I looked at marriages and partnerships and my role and what she's been up against, and sort of silently. Because Paige, you should speak here, but I'm going to tell the story real quick. You're right. It is tough for women, I think, to let go of some things, because you feel like, and because sometimes you have to take care of everything, absolutely everything. I ran our meeting last night because it's coming home from work, and I called her, and her voice was tense. So we've been together for 24 years. Like, I know, right?
Yeah.
Since we were 14 years old. I know, like, she was tense. And I was like, what's going on? She's like, the kids are just being asses to me. They're assholes to me at the grocery store. And I can hear them screaming in the background, and they're just being jerks, you know, they're being punks. And I get home, and she's overwhelmed, and I'm like, oh, I'm going to take the meeting tonight. You just relax, watch a movie. And she's like, no. I'm like, you need to take a night off. No, I literally had to rip it from her. But I think that comes from the conditioning that you're responsible for it your entire life. It must be hard to let go. I understand why it's hard to let go. I completely get it. And these are issues. I'm not saying that it's all women and it's not any men. I'm just saying this is the issue we're talking about at this moment, is what's in this book and what you both have experienced, I think, when it comes to issues that are unique to women, and why that drives so many people to resort to alcohol. So let's talk about some of those issues, the issues that you encountered, the issues that Paige has encountered, and let's get into that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think when I think about the situation, the example you just gave, and I'm not going to speak for you, Paige, but the first thing I think of when I hear that, and tell me if I'm wrong, is there's this feeling for me of almost shame or embarrassment with being idle, with not being productive. I'm afraid of being judged. I'm afraid of setting a bad example. Like, I feel like that mothers, and maybe dads are too, I'm not speaking for dads, but there's this standard of being idle means lazy or bad mom, and that there can be some shame in not having something to show for your time.
Yeah, for sure. And it's the perfectionism too, of wanting to do things exactly how I want to do. Like, this was on my books. This is what I needed to do. I need to set an example, and I need to get it done.
And I'm guessing, I'm asking both of you, like, and a guilt associated with that when you're not doing it. That sort of just comes, it's almost ambient, because it's not like anyone's necessarily telling you, but it's ambient. It's been conditioned in you your entire life, whether that's through your own parents or just messaging through books and media. You're told you got to do everything, and not just do it, fucking smile when you do it, right? Yeah. Don't bitch about
complain.
it.
Don't complain.
Yeah, that is just, oh my gosh. And so a lot of people, I wanted to ask about circumstantial drinking, heavy drinking, gray area drinking, because you're right. You've never said, and I love how you put it. Like, I'm not a Jason-aholic. I'm not a, you don't call like ex-cigarette smokers like cigarette-aholics or anything like that. But we do that with alcohol. It's kind of strange.
Yeah. It's a lifetime sentence.
Yeah. It's sort of strange. It's something I haven't touched in a decade plus. I'm still like, yeah, I'm an alcoholic, but I'm not. It doesn't bother me. I don't drink, right. And it doesn't have an issue.
I never think about it. Yeah.
But a lot of people find themselves. So that, like, I wanted to ask you about this. When reading your book, sometimes I wasn't sure. I'm like, did the mental load cause the alcoholism? Are women finding themselves alcoholic because they've been driven to that point? Because it is an addictive substance, and it can come on as a result of stresses and things like that. Or is this something that was always in you? What do you think?
Yeah, that's such a great question. The chicken or egg. I think if you had asked me in my early sobriety, I would have said that it came from the mental load in parenting. But with later years and hindsight, I think I think it was pretty inevitable. I've always been a high risk drinker. I've always had a very high tolerance. I used to be proud of my high tolerance. I was the girl who could go head to head with the frat boys in college. it made me cool, and I think for me, it was a matter of time. I think the problem with mommy wine culture is it gave me an excuse to go down it faster. Whereas the last thing I needed to be doing during those early years of motherhood, where I felt like I was losing myself completely, was turn to alcohol. But there I was, um, relying on it to get through the day. And as you know, it's the absolute worst thing you can do for your mental health. And I had to learn the hard way, and I had to learn it pretty fast.
Messaging around alcohol is that you need alcohol to have fun. And when you get sober, you figure out pretty quickly, this is literally what we're told, is that you have to have it to have fun. Like everything, it's like, that's the messaging. It's like, and so my first year of sobriety it was weird. I remember like going to a party. God, I was probably a month sober.
Yeah.
And we had like a code word. I don't remember what it was, but I was like, if I start to feel uncomfortable, I'll give you a code word. And we had talked about it beforehand. I was like, I want you to enjoy things, because I was pretty resolute on not ever getting in anyone else's way because I didn't drink. But I also learned pretty quickly that drunk people are fun to a point, and then they get annoying because they just like repeat themselves, and like they spit when they talk, and they get like, they're close talkers. They get like real close, and uncomfortable, like touchy and shit. It's just, it was weird. You have to learn how to have fun again in a lot of ways. And as a mom, as a new mom, especially, what the hell did you do? How'd you spend your time if you weren't in these social groups? Like what did that look like? I always wondered, like, what were you doing up there?
Well, as you know, the first year I wasn't having fun. So that wasn't even, that
You
wasn't
weren't
a
doing
problem.
anything. You were just like living life as if, just not drinking.
Yeah, I was doing everything the same. I was going through all the motions, but I was white knuckling it, um, like my life depended on it. You know what I've realized, and actually this would make a great Substack post. The the idea of fun, what fun means, changes so significantly in sobriety, because when you are able to separate what I used to consider fun, which is a short dopamine high, realistically, to what I now consider fun, which is doing something that I'm moving my body, I'm talking to people who fill my soul, I'm I'm seeing something that feels or looks beautiful. That is what fun looks like to me now. And I just think when you talk about, well, how do you have fun now? I think I've learned how to actually have fun, which is so important, and is what brings me closest to when I was a kid, right? When we did know how to have fun without this quick dopamine fix that alcohol or drugs can bring us, when we were able to experience things in the moment. And I don't know if you've ever been on a trampoline as an adult, but this
Oh
is the
yeah.
first example I think of. But you're like floating in the air for multiple seconds at a time. This is really fun, right? And it makes you think about when you were a kid and you were like, this is so fun. And it's like, how did I lose sight of this? This just, when I was drinking, I would have watched other people on the trampoline as I drank to have fun while all the people are out there having fun. It's mind blowing, how just your perspective and outlook in life changes so much. So I think I lost out on the opportunity to have fun, as my drinking increased, and as I just lost more and more sight of what fun even was.
You're right. The definition of fun completely changes. And oftentimes we do go back to some of the things that, like, at our genesis were always fun. I started playing guitar more and just getting outdoors more and riding my mountain bike again, like stuff that I loved doing way before this ever happened.
Mhm.
Stuff's still fun. It really is. You do rediscover fun. something else that changes our relationships, and that's not just with our friends, but our partners too. And I'll your partner's not here, your husband's not here, but I know for us, there was a dynamic that changed, like dynamic that changed. Like I think, and Paige, you speak for me, like you were grateful I got sober,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But also in that same breath, you can say, but it got really weird. Like go to restaurants together, and we used to drink together and have like a great time. I used to act a fool, like not completely act a fool, but like we'd have fun. Right? I was a fun drunk. I was a fun guy to be around when I drank. We'd do stupid shit. We'd have fun conversations, and that just ceases all of a sudden. And the dynamic in your marriage changes too. And this is especially relevant for our listeners, is that when that happens, like you wish for sobriety, but sometimes you also wish quietly in your own private moments that like, damn, I wish we could just like have a fucking drink together.
Yeah, I had to grieve that life a little bit because I enjoyed those times with you. I mean, I think that's just part of it. It was like natural for me. And it was an adjustment. It was an adjustment for sure.
And with friends as well. Like my, I didn't hang out. Like I've had the same set of friends. That's a theme in my life. I'm just like, I don't change people. Didn't change her friends. I've had the same friends since I was like 7, and we hang out, but we didn't hang out for like a year because I didn't know how to hang out with them anymore. I didn't know how. I didn't know if they'd want to hang out with me. I thought that that's what our relationship was. You know, we smoke buds, we drink, and that's what we did. Did you go through some of that as well?
Yes, I went through all of that. Most people, I would say, start dating their significant other using alcohol. You go to have a drink, you have wine with dinner. My husband and I were very much drinking buddies right from the start. So I think he had to see kind of this, I mean, for lack of a better word, the consequences of a newly sober partner firsthand. Uh, because it wasn't all sunshine and rainbows, right? It was a lot of um, pushback and very very heavy moodiness and depression and this victim mindset. I didn't want, like, because I had kept this secret. My husband knew what I was doing, but him and my mom were the only ones. Like, it was a secret. I'd asked everyone to keep it a secret. So I tried to live our lives as normally as possible, and I tried to still do things with friends. I was just miserable the entire time. So I'm sure I was just a delight to be around by everybody. At least my husband knew why. None of my friends knew why. But it's such, when you quit drinking, it really is this metamorphosis in that you have to refigure out who you are, what your personality is, what do you do for fun, all these things you're starting to learn for some of us for the first time in our adult lives. And it's scary, this idea of, what if I'm not any fun? What if nobody
Oh
wants
yeah.
to be around me? What if I'm not funny? What if I'm just that lame person that sits in the corner and people talk about is so weird? All these, you go through the full gamut of like, what ifs. And my husband and I did, we had to go work this out in therapy because he didn't understand addiction. He was wondering, am I going to go back to drinking? Like, can we have that drink together
Yeah.
in a couple of years? Like, he's like, I know you've got to go through this right now, but maybe this is something I can look forward to later. And we had to kind of have these really heart-to-heart conversations about what this means, what this was. Oh, and by the way, let me go through all the secrets I've been keeping from you with my addiction, so you understand that this isn't just me doing a 30-day cleanse. Like,
Yeah,
I
it was just
really
different
had
than
a
that.
major
Just
drinking problem.
deeper,
It's
man.
deeper. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a lot of like, you have to uncover and unearth a lot of shame, a lot of guilt, a lot of lies, deception, even for yourself, the things you were telling yourself. So we went through that whole thing. I have learned in my sobriety that I am a an introvert. I didn't know that when I was a drinker because I always wanted to go to the parties.
Were you a
I always
lovey-dovey
wanted,
drinker, like with him or with friends? Like you were the lovey-dovey type, where that's when you
yeah,
opened up, like emotionally, anyway.
yes. Yeah, I mean, I became friends easily. I thought it was funny. I was probably not funny at all, but I thought it was
I don't
funny.
know. You're
I
low
was a
key
good
funny. I could see you being
dancer.
Right?
funny.
It's that thing that Annie Grace says where she's like, oh, dear alcohol, you told me I would be funny and a good dancer when I was with you. I saw the videos. You lied.
You
Yeah.
liar.
And that's genuinely how I feel. Like I'm so grateful that the majority of my drinking was done before social media really took off because hot damn, there would be some doozies in there. But my friendships really did change in my sobriety because I stopped calling the drinking buddies. I stopped, doing that outreach, and they stopped calling me too. So,
Find out who your
it was a
friends are,
two-way
right?
street. Yeah, you do.
Yeah.
It is a really good friendship filter.
I
Because
like
for
that.
every drinking buddy I lost, I retained a friend who I thought I might lose, but who didn't care in the slightest that I was no longer drinking. So, it wound up being a really good thing. But I think in the early days when you're seeing kind of people fall by the wayside, you're like, I'm running out of people, in my
Yeah, it's scary.
Rolodex.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very scary. It's very scary, but now it doesn't even faze me. I mean, none
Right.
of it phases me, but it just it's it's just something that comes with time and confidence and seeing um, that the benefits of all of it so far outweigh losing a couple drinking buddies. Like
Yeah.
I can't believe I
Right.
lost sleep over that.
Yeah, you really find out who your friends are. Like someone put it to me, those that mind don't matter and those that matter don't mind.
Mm,
And that was absolutely the truth in my life. Like the
totally.
people that really mattered in my life didn't care. They didn't care. And you knew who they were pretty quickly. I was a I was a fun drinker, but I've always been sort of extroverted. And I'm interested in talking to you're like one of the second person we've had on in like 150 plus episodes is actually in recovery. Just because I trust so few people's perspective in recovery, because there's some bad ones that I don't shouldn't
Mhm.
say that, but there are. It's just fact. I don't.
There's some toxic ones.
There are
Yeah.
some
Yeah.
bad
Yeah.
ones, you know. I love your perspective, but rediscovering emotional intimacy is it's tough for a lot of people, especially introverts. But for me, like I had to learn what the language of emotions even were and like how to communicate that. Because when I would get hammered or take a bunch of pills or something, I would send her like these long essay text messages about how much I love you and how much you mean to me and how what I'm willing to do to make sure that we make it. And like I think that a lot of our listeners are used to getting shit like that. What and if you're not cool talking about it, say pass, but what was it like for you to rediscover how to talk to your husband and like communicate that stuff again?
It's still really hard. I'm a writer through and through. When I've got something to say, generally, I just write it out. But I think you get more comfortable with it through practice, through couples therapy, um, through the tools you learn in couples therapy. Our marriage therapist told us the coolest trick a couple months ago. It was like, um, when you say this, and whatever it is they said, I hear this. And then you say what, you intuited from what they just said.
Mm-hmm.
Am I correct? And just that can help kind of break the disconnect of what they said versus what you took from it so quick, so quick. So just learning tools like that, the Dear Man tool,
Mm-hmm.
I was just talking about that in therapy. Like all the things I learned in therapy are like, I want to do trickle down therapy to everybody. Like, did you
Yeah.
guys
Did
know
you guys know
Right.
this?
about this?
Like you have to try this. It's amazing. But these are things that I think you can only start to learn and practice and grow from when you have the emotional capability to go there in the conversation. I mean, I'm
Oh,
sure
that's
you've
it.
heard before that the theory is, I don't know if there's science to this, but based on the time you start drinking, you are not able to emotionally mature.
I,
So if
I
you,
don't know if the science is
do you,
there, but I agree
yeah, yeah, yeah,
1000%.
yeah.
Yes.
So when if I became a heavy drinker at, let's say, college, 18, when I quit drinking, I'm working off the emotional intelligence of an 18-year-old.
Hell yeah.
And there's a lot of growth to be done there.
Oh my God. Yeah.
So I think we have to give ourselves a lot of grace, and recognize that we are starting maybe pretty far behind from maybe where our partner is, but at the same time, that's not an excuse. Like, we have to learn the tools. We have to take the time. We've got to invest ourselves into um, developing that education, that maturity level. And that's where, the good stuff's going to come, because my husband doesn't want to be married to someone with the emotional maturity of an 18-year-old. Like,
Right.
dear God, no.
Yeah. Paige did that for a while. It's not fun.
No.
Yeah. I mean, no, thank you. So it's on me, and I don't want to live. I was miserable at 18. Give me a break. I, I have a lot of learning to do. I have a lot of growth to do. I think I have probably emotionally matured, probably even more than 7 years
It catches up
worth.
way
It
quick.
catches up.
Way
Um,
quick.
but it's not going to happen on its own. It's not going to magically appear with, good sleep and eating patterns.
No.
Right.
You've got to read the books. You've got to do the therapy. And I mean, it's work. Everything's work.
It is. And man, I love where this is headed, because there's so much truth to that. I think people think that you remove this substance and then magically everything gets better in your life. Like, I was told that when you get sober, you feel better. And they were right. I felt anger better. I felt sadness better. I felt depression better. I felt everything for the first time in my entire life.
Yeah.
And I had to learn how to communicate everything. I was like, literally, I mean, I started using and drinking at 17, and I got sober the day before my 27th birthday. And I literally felt 17 when I got sober, like emotionally. And I know that
You looked it too. I remember when you were walking out in rehab, and I was like, whoa, this is taking me a long time, because you
Fuck,
look
you're a
like
high
you're
school
17
kid.
again. It was weird.
And acted like it. And it was so rocky in the beginning. I think one thing that we have in common is that we wanted to do that work, and we wanted to tackle that work.
Mhm.
And you've worked with a lot of people. I've worked with a lot of people. I just want your take. What do you think it is that separates the people that figure that piece of it out versus those that don't?
Hmm. I mean, that's the
That's
million
the
dollar
$1,000,000
question,
question, right? It
right?
is.
I was just like, I have people message me all the time, like, I relapsed again. Why won't it stick? All those things. It can't, like, and we know this, but it can't stick until you are ready to go there.
Yeah.
Um, I was on it. This is going to sound so stupid. I was doing a Peloton workout. This was years ago, and I think it was Jess King, the Peloton instructor,
Yeah.
who's like, you already know what it feels like if you quit now, meaning quit working out, like,
Right.
get off the Peloton,
You've done that
go
100
sit on the
times.
couch. Yeah, you already know what that's going to feel like. It's time to find out what it'll feel like if you keep going. And that, to me, is where you need to be to say, this is the one. This is the one that's going to stick. Because you have to be ready to say, I'm ready to find out. And I just don't know how else you can know, or that you can say, like, this is it. It can't just be based on consequences, as we know. It can't just be based on enthusiasm or how much money you're willing to spend. Like,
Or
that has
boundaries, or
nothing to do with
any
it.
of that
Yeah.
stuff.
Or ultimatums. Like, it has to be where you are at this place in your headspace where you're like, I need to find out what happens when I keep going.
Yeah, it's like it's intrinsically driven more than anything,
Mm-hmm.
I think. Outside consequences, I've seen people go through, oh my God, hell and back
Yeah.
like 10, 12 treatment centers, prison sentences, you name it. But it's like one day you decide, I'm done. I'm on the record as talking about addiction as a disease and the choice model. And there's a bunch of different models of addiction, but a lot of people, and I think this is really especially true. Maybe it's just the 12 step sort of like vernacular that gets thrown around. It's like, you can't be mad at people. They have a disease. You can't be mad at them for that because they have a disease. It never felt like a disease to me. Like, it didn't. Like, I don't know another way to put it. Like, when I first heard that in AA, I remember like this guy was talking, he's like, my disease is out in the parking lot doing push-ups trying to kill me, and my disease wants to kill me. I'm like, I don't relate to that. Like, that thing you said earlier I liked, but that sounds dumb. And I remember like hearing that and asking myself, like, disease, like, I don't know another disease that operates like dependent on my choices. You know what I mean? Like, in the beginning, it was a lot of bad choices that led me to this place. And I think that there was a moment when I could have stopped and I didn't. I don't know when that was, though. I don't think we ever do, right? That's like the bitch of it all. And then at some point, you do get stuck in this cycle where your brain is absolutely working against you. And it feels like you can't quit and you feel like you don't have a choice. But then it's bookended by another choice. Like it's a process bookended by choices. Like, some point you choose, and then at some point you also choose. I don't know another way to describe it, because I've also seen people that seem hopeless, like completely hopeless and lost and burned in it. So I think it's maybe a spectrum. I don't know. Where do you stand with all that?
I mean, this is going deep. I believe it's a spectrum because I think my dad reached a place where it was no longer a choice.
Right. Like exactly what I'm referring to. Yeah.
Yeah. And that was such an impetus for my quitting. It was like, I have to quit now while I still have the choice. Because I've seen what happens when you lose that ability to say, I choose my family. Like, innately, anybody would choose their family or their children, or life over the death of the hell that is addiction. Like, there's no choice to be had. But when you lose that neurological option, like it's not even an on or off switch anymore in your brain. It doesn't matter what the consequences are. It doesn't matter what the ultimatum is. And I saw that firsthand with my dad. And I don't know if that is from the consequence of drinking for as many years as he drank, or if it was genetic. Like, I don't know. But one of the biggest reasons of my own, like, I have to quit now, was like, if I don't do it now, I might not be able to later.
Yeah. Do you ever have those moments where you're like, maybe it was a phase, maybe I'm not an alcoholic after all, but then you think about what you've gone through, and like, the fact that you're even asking that question is almost affirmation that you absolutely have a problem. It's like, if all this stuff I say is true, but yet I find myself like fantasizing, it's like, ooh, isn't that just confirmation? Do you do that same thing? I find myself doing
Oh,
it.
totally, totally. I think we live in such a alcohol infused world. It's everywhere. It's all the time. It surrounds us, even with, my friends and family. Like, it's constant. You can't avoid it. I don't know how anyone could avoid it. So, I will be on social media and I'll see like a joke. Here's a stupid one where the one with the woman being like, um, I I'm quitting drinking till Christmas. And she says, oh, shoot, I got to fix the punctuation. I'm quitting, comma, drinking till Christmas. And
I like
part of
that.
me is like, yeah, like,
Yeah.
that's funny. And then I'm like, wait, no, wait, that's not me. I can't do that. So I feel like my brain still plays those games.
Yeah.
Um, but all it takes for me, it only takes a second. Like, we're talking a fraction of a second
Yes,
for
exactly. It's
me
like, it's
to
so quick.
pivot, but to be like, I don't want one drink, and I'll never want, like, the idea of one drink sounds so dumb. So
But what's the point?
as long as I can reframe it real quick, then I'm like, it's cool. Like, it's cool. This person is not out to get me. They're not trying to destroy my sobriety. Um, but this was never about a drink,
Right.
and it never will be.
Yeah. And I think that's why it's important to write about it. I think that's why it's important to talk about it. I think that's why it's important, because you get removed from it for long enough and you kind of forget those lessons. And like, this is a horrible thing, but it's the truth. The reason that I will still hit up an AA meeting is because I need to see the scouts come back with arrows in their ass and tell me that it doesn't get any better. That's the truth. Like, I need to see that pain from time to time, and I'm there for them. Don't get me wrong. Like, I'm not sicko, but
Right.
I need to see that and be reminded that, like, oh, that's right. That's still there. And like, I loved how you say, like, I'm not powerless over alcohol. Like, powerlessness wasn't really my experience unless I was drinking. But like right now, like, I am not powerless over alcohol. I'm not. When I drink, that's a different conversation. Like,
Exactly.
I do stupid shit, make horrible choices. You could argue I'm powerless over it, but I don't like some of the labels too that you had mentioned, like powerlessness and all that. But I get why they're important for people. I understand. And you're right. There's a spectrum of people that I think we can all agree, like that guy or woman or whoever is powerless, like completely powerless, like hopelessly addicted.
Hmm. I think a couple things based on what you just said. I think that is, for better or worse, that is such an important part of community, is we do need to hear the devastating stories. We do need to hear this is what can and will happen, because alcohol is destructive. On social media or anywhere, ads, we only see the fun, sexy side of it. It's very hard to capture the destructive, you know, ruining families, setting fire to your entire life side of it. But you do get that from recovery meetings, and it reminds you of what this is all for. But the second side of community that I didn't learn until obviously I was in a community is that our stories are impactful and empowering and life changing, and we can be a force of good. And I think for somebody who has struggled with addiction for a long time, who felt like maybe you're a bad person, or you carry so much shame and feel like you've done everything wrong, and there's no coming back from that, to now be in a place where you can support someone in that way, in that loving way, as a mentor, as a story of hope and redemption, um, is so empowering too. And it's yet another reminder of why we do this and what it's for, to be able um, to hold the hand of the person who is in that fire and say, let me help you.
Yeah. And that's the alchemy of recovery. That's the beautiful part about it. You can take this terrible experience and make it an incredibly empowering and inspirational and beautiful thing. So when I first came across your content, it was obviously, there's a lot of sobriety content. There's some awesome quotes and things like that. There's it seems like here lately you've kind of taken a shift, and you hinted it in your book. It's like the role of women, the role of men, and how this is not always equal. I'd like to kind of conclude the conversation. Both of you, I would love to hear you wax philosophical on this stuff too, about what can we do? What ought to be done? Like, if you could place shit on someone else's algorithm, like a man's, we're just going to say it, on a man's algorithm, because I think for me, this was so meaningful. Like, what message would you send? What message would you send about, you don't know it, but this is what your wife is going through. This is what your partner, your spouse is going through. What do they need to hear? What do guys need to hear? Both of you.
Paige, do you want to go first?
Yeah, I'll go first. Well, I think for you, in our experience, what helped you was like reading books like this, was to actually putting and putting yourself into, putting yourself into our community and listening to the women that are struggling and what we're dealing with and what we have to go through. That was a pivotal moment for you.
That was huge. You're right.
It was huge. Yeah. It was huge for our marriage. It was huge for you individually. So I think that the things that we go through just need to be put into your hands from somebody else besides their wife, because they're not listening to us, obviously.
Why are we so dumb? Like, why don't we understand? And this is what was embarrassing about it all, was that when I read the book and I was like, how did I not see this shit sooner? Like, it's so weird. It's like brainwash or
Well, when
something?
you're in it, you're not able to see it. Like it's different. You have to see it from an outsider's perspective and be like, oh, okay, I get it. You know, hear it from somebody else's voice, somebody else's words.
And there's some guys, don't even know, there's some guys that just get this innately. They understand it. I wasn't one of those fully, and I don't know why that is. And I'm ashamed to say it. I wish I was one of those guys who's like, oh, I've known this all along, dumbass. How'd you not see that? But I didn't. I didn't. And I would love to help change that narrative. I know that you're working at it. Like, what can we do? Support women better to help this stuff from occurring more, like the circumstantial type alcoholism, where someone can find themselves driven to a point where they have no choice but to just calm down with the substance.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think it starts with in our home, right? It starts with where we live and having those conversations, those hard conversations that nobody tells you about in the what to expect books. But probably some of the most critical conversations you can have with your partner on how do we break out of the gender norms of the way maybe we saw our parents do it and do this in a way that is going to be best and most sustainable for both of us. It really starts there. And for me, that was such an eye-opening moment because no one had told me that I would have to effectively change the way I thought motherhood would look like based on the way I saw my mom and grandmother do it. If I was going to live a mentally healthy life. I mean, just for lack of a better way to say it. And that was really important. So I think it starts there, as with anything. But from there, and I think this is probably the shift you're seeing on my social media, is I'm seeing beyond that. We're having those conversations, right? And there's been incredible books talking about this. My friend Gemma Hartley wrote Fed Up, fabulous book about emotional labor. You've got Eve Rodsky, who wrote Fair Play, a really great tactical guide to redistribute household labor at home. But we have to think bigger. And the way I see that happening is through legislative change, through dismantling the patriarchal notions of where a woman's value comes from. What's important about a woman's what women contribute, which kind of goes back to the conversation we were having earlier about this idea of an idle woman. You know, this what a disgusting concept, right?
Yeah.
And we have to dismantle a lot of those old belief systems that we grew up on that are probably ingrained in us. And we're going to have to vote. We're going to have to vote for changes. We need better postpartum supports. Women do. Men need access to paid paid parental leave. You know, why would just a woman get parental leave? And not to say women don't need paid parental leave too. We need that in America too. But both parents should be getting parental leave. Otherwise, what kind of message is that saying? We need better benefits and flexibility at work to have either a female or a male pick up a sick child, take time off for a doctor's appointment for the child, to do those things, to be able to send emails to the father about what's going on at school, and not just the mom, to have access to changing stations in every restroom, not just for one gender. So there's a lot of actual impactful change we can make at a community or even federal level that can help shift this narrative that starts with us voting accordingly.
You're right. You're right. Like, there's no
Yep.
way around that. There's no way to untangle the need for legislative change from these changes that need to take place. it's not going to be just someone going viral talking about it. It's not going to be that. It's going to be
Right.
forced. It's going to be like pried away, more or less, you know? And I
Mm-hmm.
think it's bizarre, and both of you have probably encountered some degree of this when men fight back. Like it makes me somehow less masculine or something, that that we're equal, that we're like I've asked people, like, if you're not a feminist, I want to know why not. Like, this is literally half the world's
Right.
fucking population. Like, this is, you're married, right? Like, your best friend's a woman. What's the problem here? It's very weird. Let's talk about some of the attacks that you get, and where do you think that comes from? I don't understand it. Maybe you do.
I think,
You got
I
funny
mean,
stuff about it, at least.
yeah, I like to make fun of it. I did a post, I don't know, not too long ago, where I kind of criticized the the husband in a traditional relationship who's like, hey, what should I feed my kids for breakfast? With the understanding, like, you're one of the child's parents. Unless your child was born yesterday, you should probably know what your child eats during the day. And there was a lot of pushback on that, being like, one guy says, save that energy for the next time your car needs an oil change.
Oh
And
my God. Why is it always the car?
Oh,
why is it always
or
the
the
oil
yard.
change?
Yeah,
The
the y'all
yard.
heard. Yeah.
The next time you need those leaves blown.
Yeah, what are you
But
going
yeah,
to do?
it, it's it's this old, it's these traditional roles that women and men have, been carrying for all this time, using it almost as a power trip, when that's exactly what we're trying to shake up. Who's to say that changing the oil is a gendered job? Who's to say taking out the trash is a gendered job? And who's to say caretaking for the kids is a gendered job? Frankly, it does men a disservice. My husband's just as good of a parent as I am, if not better sometimes. Like, why would we put the bulk of that responsibility on me, especially when I'm dysregulated or just not in a mental headspace to be nurturing?
Right. It's
That's
like as if it's just assumed because you are a woman that you're going to be better
right.
at all this stuff. Like
Exactly.
completely throwing out any individual characteristics that you have, that's Paige or Celeste has. Like, listen, that's not a strong suit of mine. Too bad. You're a woman. Figure it out.
Yeah.
It's
We have
wild.
to break through that. We have to break through
Yes.
that. We have to um, question everything that we grew up believing, because it's not how um, it's not the best way, and everything else has changed. More women are working than ever. Why wouldn't we be changing corporate policies to be more conducive of that? Why aren't we changing what we say about a man's role or a woman's role accordingly, to be more conducive of, we're all different and we're all good at different things. Um, and it's for 99, maybe 100% of it has nothing to do with gender. And we need to make these changes, and we need to enable the the legislation we have in the United States to change some of these gendered labels as well.
Yeah, and they do that, and then I don't know how long it takes. I mean, even then, you have to break some of the social conditioning that people have, and
Mm-hmm.
geographic, and it's political. It's deep. It runs deep. I hope the conversation becomes more prevalent with men. I really do. I don't think it makes you any less masculine whatsoever. If that's what you're afraid of being less masculine, you can be fine. You can have a gray beard and muscles and still talk about this stuff. It's okay. It's fine. It's not going
Yeah,
to make you any. In fact, I think it makes you more masculine.
Yeah, exactly.
Truthfully.
Right.
exactly.
But for me, it started with this book, and that's where I want to end things for all of our male listeners. Read this book. Get the book and read the book, and then apply the book. Your life will change tremendously, and your marriage will get better too. You'll start to see the world in a different way. And why wouldn't you support your best friend? Why wouldn't you want to be an equal player in your children's lives? You know, why wouldn't you want to do these things? That's the right thing to do. That's the masculine thing to do. That's the right thing. Why can't we have these conversations? So any of our male listeners, get the book. And even for our women listeners, it's going to be an incredibly validating experience for you to pick that thing up and go through it. And Celeste, I can't thank you enough for writing it, for everything you do, for all the content you create, for all the, I mean, really, I digest your stuff. I consume it on a regular basis and I love it. I hope you never stop writing. I know that being a writer is a tough thing. You've taught me that. No doubt that it's a tough game out there. It's like content creation too. You can make something you think is beautiful and it's like crickets, you know, and then one day something goes wild and it's like, well, okay, well, it's persistence. You've taught me about persistence, if anything. Just thank you for being you. Thank you for coming on the show and giving everyone the time. I think is a great conversation.
I love it. I'm so happy to be on here. You guys are amazing. I love how you have broken through so much of these taboo topics that couples don't talk about. And you're doing it publicly, which is really hard, but you are talking about the things that I genuinely wish my parents talked about. And what you are doing is literally changing lives and saving lives. So thank you for doing the hard things.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right. Until next time, I'm Matt.
I'm Paige.
And we'll see you.
Bye.